If the past teaches us any one thing about the future, it is this. Anybody's guess is as good as anyone else's, pretty much. You don't have to look far to see things which would have seemed inconceivable or indeed incomprehensible really not so long ago. All of human history has been soundtracked by an exasperated global chorus of "Dear God, now what?" 2026 can therefore safely be anticipated, much like every year before it, as one damn thing after another. It is possible, nevertheless, to bet with some confidence that the world and this programme will remain preoccupied with Europe's largest land war in nearly a century, a Middle East being Middle Eastern even by the standards of the Middle East, and the effect on all of the above and more besides of a US president abundantly capable of believing 6 impossible things before breakfast. To persist with the Lewis Carroll illusion, if 2025 was a year in which the world strolled boldly through the looking glass, is there any chance that 2026 will be a year in which we walk it back at least a few paces? Might we ask ourselves, as a planet and as a species, seriously, what are we doing? The short answer is almost certainly no. The longer answer is coming right up. What fresh hells might the coming 12 months unleash? With what grounds for optimism may we console or delude ourselves? And will the Norwegian Nobel Committee take pity at last on Donald Trump? This is the Foreign Desk.
My fear is that none of the peace processes that Donald Trump is already claiming justify his getting the Nobel Peace Prize will prove to be real.
Right now, it's to China's advantage to kind of sit back with the popcorn and let the U.S. unravel.
There is always a possibility in wars that they will get worse. The longer they go, the more the stakes are higher. When you have this kind of situation that is basically about his personal survival and the people around him, I'm not so sure what they are capable to do.
Welcome to the Foreign Desk's Look Ahead to 2026, and I am joined by the very same people who helped me look back at 2025 last week. They are Quentin Peel, former foreign editor of the Financial Times, Yossi Meckelberg, senior consulting fellow at the Middle East North Africa programme at Chatham House, and Julie Norman, associate professor of international relations at UCL and co-author of Gaza, The Dream and the Nightmare. Welcome back, all of you. It's like I haven't seen you in 5 minutes.
Hello.
This symposium will take the form of a series of questions about things that may or may not happen in 2026. And the fun part of this is, all of you, if we have learnt anything from recent history, it is that basically anybody's guess is as good as anybody else's. So we're not going to judge you 12 months hence on what you got right or wrong. So, Quentin, I'll start with you, and a simple one. When and how will the war in Ukraine end, and will it be this year?
No, I don't think it'll end for another couple of years at least, because it just doesn't add up at the moment with the attempt at a peace that we've seen launched by Trump's sidekick, Mr. Witkoff, and Putin's sidekick. Just doesn't make sense to actually make anybody really want to step back. The danger, therefore, is that we're going to see a really rather nasty escalation there.
Do you see it that way, Yossi? Do you see escalation, de-escalation, or just more of the same, i.e. Russia continuing to fling endless waves of what Ukraine's defenders refer to as meat waves at Ukraine's defences, and Ukraine just to keep holding what they have?
Since you promised not to remind me this in 12 months, I'll take a risk. I think wars have their own dynamics, and I think events can actually dictate this. I think the smart money will say it will continue along the same lines. But in all wars that I've followed, there are some events, crucial events, at one point or another that can dictate, and then they can change track. They can change track towards actually advancing negotiation and can go even worse. One of the biggest fears is when you have one country with nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a complete asymmetry in the nuclear level, but also on conventional one. So it's obvious that you can deal, give or take, with conventional war, but at what point that you have someone, again, unpredictable, which is very difficult to know what is his psyche after all these years in complete control of a country, where it can only go much worse than that.
So you think it could actually get worse than it already is?
I think it could get worse. There is always a possibility in wars that they will get worse, because a lot of this, the longer they go, the more the stakes are higher for both sides. Because it's not, especially when you have an authoritarian government, it becomes not only about the country, or less and less about the country, it becomes about their own only survival. There is no, you see, Assad could go and live in Moscow. I don't think Putin is going to live in Damascus. So when you have this kind of situation that it's basically about his personal survival and the people around him, I'm not so sure what they are capable to do.
You see that on the other side too, where the idea that in order to get a peace process, Ukraine must give up territory that it hadn't actually lost, but they've already lost an awful lot of people defending that territory. That becomes incredibly difficult for Zelensky to agree to.
Well, which does bring me to you, Julian, to try and frame this somewhat optimistically. Is there any available fudge that you can see that might bring an end to the fighting? And I'm not the only person who has suggested this idea of a kind of post-World War II Germany model, or even, if you like, a Cyprus model, in that Russia kind of gets to keep what it has. Western Ukraine becomes incorporated into Western structures on the understanding that as there is absolutely no record of people living under Russian dominion enjoying it, they will get those bits of Ukraine back eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking the long bet and thinking that I do think it'll limp forward a little bit in improving this year. I'm hopeful of that. And partly of that is just time, quite honestly. Like, I think in a lot of the wars that a lot of us have followed, there is a certain point where just a certain level of ability to continue it starts tapering. And I do think there's an emerging like permission structure, if you will, to start like moving back a bit from just the full-on aggression that we've seen, or defense from Ukraine's point of view. And I do think there are some models that are being discussed in the background right now. I would say more of a Korea model than anything else, with a DMZ that allows for that zone to be somewhat compromised, but that Ukraine doesn't have to formally acknowledge its ownership by Russia. That kind of keeps the door open for later things. But I would just say I do think it's nudging in the right direction by now, but there's going to be a lot of backsliding before there's an actual end, as you know, Quentin and Yossi have said. But I do think it's a limping in the right direction, just simply because it can't extend forever with the human cost on both sides.
Okay, well, the next question I have for the table, and I'll put this to you first, Yossi, pertains to the United States. President Trump will face two moments of reckoning towards the end of 2026. One is the midterm elections. The other is the Nobel Peace Prize. Is he going to win either of them?
One, I think not, and one, I hope not. So I'll separate. I think, again, not that I always want to kind of use Marjorie Greene as my kind of moral compass, or even political compass.
Or President Greene, as we'll be calling her 4 years from now.
Yes. It's a possibility. It's a very worrying one. But the idea that she started worrying him, listen, you're not looking in the right place for us to win the midterm election. People care about health premiums. They care about cost of living. They care about something that happens at home, not whether you keep traveling and pretend to make peace, which break down like in the case of our own Thailand the next day. And I think in this sense, there is a good chance. But it doesn't depend also how badly Trump is doing. The Democrats are also in this array. They need to come with policies. They need to come with the right candidates. They can really show the stamina and at the same time coherent policies that alternative what's going on in the United States. So I think they stand a good chance. Trump already won the FIFA Peace Prize, which is a big one. He was the first and probably the last to win ever this prize. It's probably been now retired the prize forever. So one hope that by the time it gets to the next Nobel Peace Prize, they won't make a mockery of this prize.
Quentin, what do you think? Do you like President Trump's chances in either the midterms or the Nobel Peace Prize?
I'm pretty close to Yossi, except I think I hope he doesn't win either. I mean, the Nobel Peace Prize would be so weird to give it to him for these nonsense little peace processes that he claims to have resolved. And the big ones, okay, I do recognize that we have something that approaches a ceasefire in Gaza, which is certainly better than nothing. But they don't add up, these things. So really the idea that at the end of the day he will have contributed to world peace in a major way is just weird. As for the midterms, I mean, certainly if you look at the things that are slipping back, his reputation and the economy and so on, I think that he's going to be in trouble. I don't think he will massively lose because I think the Democrats are also making a fair old pig's ear of it.
How very unlike the Democratic Party. A variation on that question to you, Julie. In 2026, do the Democrats get their act together sufficiently to put a dent in Trump in the midterms and perhaps to give some shape to what their 2028 presidential candidate might look like, if not necessarily who it actually is? And, of course, will President Trump win that Nobel Peace Prize?
Well, on the Peace Prize, I would say I would agree with the others. I mean, even if Trump had the best plan for Gaza, the best plan for Ukraine, you can't be bombing ships in the Caribbean and totally rewriting the rules of war on the other side of the world and still expect the Nobel Peace Prize. And I think the Nobel would be quite tarnished by ignoring other things that Trump is doing. And yeah, for the Democrats, I mean, hope springs eternal that they will get their act together. I will say for the midterms, like, it's very common for the party that's out of power to do well in the midterms. So I think just by any metrics, the Democrats stand a good chance. And I would point out, turnout for midterms is not fantastic. It's usually people who are pretty invested in politics, so people who, care about it and want to see the Democrats in power. So I do think the Democrats will gain seats. But with that said, I mean, the way Trump is governing, yes, it's true that Congress has abdicated their power, but Trump is also consolidating so much power within the executive branch. He's doing so much through executive order that even the Democrats in Congress will not be able to completely restrain and constrain a lot of what he's doing. And I think that's an important thing to remember. It won't be, neutering Trump, I think, to the extent that some people believe it will, even if the Democrats have a great November next year.
Well, let's look across the Pacific. A nice, easy one for you, Quentin. Will China invade Taiwan?
I don't think so, no, because I think the stakes are just incredibly high and they're doing all right without invading Taiwan. And therefore, I mean, in this weird world that we are currently living, China is proving to be the most predictable of the superpowers rather than the least predictable, and in a curious way the most trustworthy. I mean, they tend to be doing what they say they're doing. They also have huge domestic problems to deal with, which they haven't really come to terms with. This, the problem of domestic demand, the problem of the debt that's built up. So I think that they've got a hell of a lot going on at home, and they can see the mess that the US is making of the end of empire. Why make it worse by actually trying to grab back that, not very large island off the coast of China?
Julie, what do you think? And perhaps if we stir into this scenario, the possibility of some sort of perhaps even tariff-engendered global economic shock, which might prompt a slightly nervous superpower into drastic action.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's always been a possibility, and that ambiguity is part of China's strength right now. But I would agree with Quentin. Right now, it's to China's advantage to kind of sit back with the popcorn and let the U.S. unravel with its relationships and around the world. And also, I mean, despite the rhetoric of this U.S.-China showdown, Trump has opened up NVIDIA trade again. He's opened up a lot of the channels that were closed to China before. So they are doing better at this moment, and I think benefit from that sense of stability, and also as positing themselves as, an actor for peace, stability, for prosperity, and trying to frame those who go against it as separatists, as problematic, as agitators, rather than positioning themselves as an aggressor. So I think it'll be more of a long game. But with that said, we've seen the rhetoric changing lately. I think that's speaking more to domestic audiences than a real intent for action. But
And also, Yossi, to hook this back to a story we've already discussed, China will now have probably a fifth year of a case study live action they can observe of what happens when a revanchist superpower tries to seize back territory they think belongs to them, and Russia didn't even have to go over water to attack Ukraine. Do you think that that has made China maybe, or will continue to make China maybe a little bit more cautious than it might otherwise have been?
Probably, and I agree with what said earlier. Why get yourself into this situation when actually they just passed the $1 trillion in trade, or a surplus in trade, even before the end of the year? They are in the ascendancy. Why should they risk it with another war? The Chinese take their time. And by the way, according to a new Pentagon brief, what's called the overmatch brief, China is prepared for 2027, so it's another question for next year. Because Xi Jinping actually ordered the armed forces to be ready to seize Taiwan by 2027. So only then they are going to be ready. And the United States probably won't be ready in the way they prepare their own armed forces. But it won't benefit China in any shape or form. It's actually what's benefit them is to keep claiming that they want it. Because they can't just give up on a territory that they see that belongs to them. But they know because Taiwan developed its own character by then. This is more than 70 years, go back to 1949 and the revolution. Trying to take a country with more than 20 million people that have all the attributes of a state without the recognition will only cause more trouble than any benefit.
Well, let's move along to the bit I know you were all looking forward to, which is trying to predict the next 12 months in the Middle East in particular, because there are very rarely any surprises or shocks in that part of the world. Julie, as you know better than most, so let's try and pin this down to one question. In the next 12 months, are any actual concrete constructive steps towards a Palestinian state going to be taken? Are we going to be any closer to such a thing 12 months from now than we are now?
I think 12 months is probably a bit optimistic. I think it'll be longer than that. Right now, I would say before Israel's elections, I don't think there's any chance with the current Israeli government. If those don't happen till the autumn, that would be unlikely. And one of my fears is that even after the Israeli elections, sentiment on that particular question will not have changed. I do think there has been a change in political global consciousness, certainly in European commitments in that area. And I don't think that is going to go away. But I don't think we'll see a lot of progress on that. I think the more the focus is going to be on Gaza and making sure that what happens in Gaza does not set up a Palestinian state that's going to be even more diminished than it already has been already.
Yossi, Julie there mentions Israeli parliamentary elections, which have to happen in 2026. And on previous form, it wouldn't be all that surprising if 3 or 4 Israeli parliamentary elections happen in 2026. I mean, it has become I guess, conventional wisdom of Israeli politics that you just don't bet against Benjamin Netanyahu. But can he win again?
Everything is possible. And he won so many elections. When, again, betting against him won't be very wise. But I think he has less chances than in the past, considering what happened in October 7, 2 years ago, the way the war is conducted. As I mentioned earlier, Israel's reputation in the world is in tatter. There are anger by many people, what happened with the hostages, anger of many people that serve up to 400 days in reserve over the last 2 years. There is a lot of reason. But there is a real issue in forming an alternative coalition is the refusal of all the, Jewish Zionist parties to form a coalition with the parties that represent the Palestinian citizens of Israel. Had they agreed to that, I think yes, the opposition parties could easily form an alternative coalition. Without that, it's going to be murky and messy. And as you said, elections should take place by law not later than October, but we might have a repeat of few other elections. But the risk is that it's going to be a vitriolic, very toxic election because Netanyahu's corruption trial dictates that he needs to, at least according to him, to stay in power and derail the corruption trial. It's not going to be pretty. And in this sense, it also affects whether a Palestinian state will make certain progress towards not the Palestinian state as such, but set the foundation that can bring later to the establishment of Palestinian state.
And Quentin, before we move off the Middle East and to try and move off it, I guess in a somewhat hopeful frame of mind, do you foresee any chance of any positive diplomatic realignment, an exchange of ambassadors between Riyadh and Jerusalem, recognition of the new regime in Syria by Israel and vice versa, some sort of rapprochement between Israel and Lebanon? Are any of these things even vaguely possible?
Yeah, I'm sure they are possible. I'm not sure whether I would see them as being that positive in some ways. But no, that's excessively cynical. I really want to defer and say, just to prove that I'm not driven by artificial intelligence, I would confess to say I cannot foresee which way the Middle East is going to develop. It is just so difficult. It's the one part of the world that I was never based in because I thought this is too ghastly to try and unstitch it. So it is terribly difficult, but nobody is emerging the winner from the Middle East at the moment.
Well, we're going to move along to something which will hopefully end up being a bit more upbeat, although even as I prepare to utter it, I can see how this could go somewhat askew. There is going to be a World Cup in 2026, and I did want to go round the table, ask each of you in turn. I will start with you, Julie. Who is going to win? Why are they going to win? And obviously it's Australia, but I will I will admit other ridiculous suggestions.
I mean, I think I've got to root for Scotland this time around. I mean, that's
good luck with that.
I mean, I'm not saying they will win, but who I'm going to root for at least to start. So, but no, who will win? Oh gosh. I mean, I guess I'll probably go Brazil, but I'll hope for someone different to begin with. But I feel like it's going to be, I think a Latin American team is going to do well this year. So
why are you picking on Scotland?
I mean, to have Scotland in the World Cup, I think is an exciting thing for the UK, and it's a nice it's a nice change of pace to have another team in to root for. So
fair enough. Yossi, who's going to win the World Cup, and who will you be cheering for? They don't necessarily have to be the same team.
Obviously, England is going to win because a year in advance, England always wins the World Cup.
That is true.
And then comes the World Cup. But
that's when it all starts going wrong.
Yeah, if they didn't, it's just they have to play all the games to win. But I think there is unique this time because it's an England team that is managed and coached by a German. Mm-hmm. So that's... and it's in this sense, it goes back to 1966 when it played against Germany in the final. So I think there is a bit of an omen there that England can win.
England, Quentin, or somebody else?
It's never England in my book. We always lose to somebody, even if all the focus is on, oh my God, they could win. I would like a team to win that will make Donald Trump really unhappy. Now, who would that be? It might be Brazil or it might be Mexico.
I mean, yeah, regrettably, you would have to consider Iran and Haiti relative long shots.
Yes, quite. Now, I was going to predict that Australia might be able to win the Eurovision Song Contest, particularly as if half the other countries pull out. But having said that, back to the World Cup. Which sport is it, by the way? Is it football?
Football, yes.
Right,
or
yeah.
what we call soccer, where I come from.
Right. Yeah, I think I'll go for Mexico.
Mexico. Okay. Well, we're going to move on eventually to the fun part about asking you to name your hopes and fears for 2026. But before we do that, bustling quickly round the table, I will start with you, Quentin. I've asked you a series of questions so far. What's one I haven't asked? What's something else that you will be keeping an eye on in 2026?
The AI bubble exploding. I think it's going to happen. And
okay.
I think that will be very painful, and an awful lot of the things we've talked about might suddenly be up for grabs if it does.
Well, we've got that to look forward to. Yossi?
It's interesting, AI, because I wondered if you ask us if this time next year, all of this program will be run by AI and we will be surplus to requirements.
Well, how do each of us having our accents still imitated?
Yeah, well,
this will be a challenge, even to AI.
How do people know it isn't? So is that what you think as well, that 2026 AI, one way or the other, will be the thing?
I think so. I'm not so sure it will bubble that explode. I think it will take over more and more water. The other question relates to the Eurovision, where Israel actually will participate in the Eurovision Song Contest.
Julie.
Yeah, Quentin actually took mine, but I will say, bringing it back to geopolitics, I mean...
Stop looking at Julie's notes, Quentin.
Yeah.
I could read upside down.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the Israeli elections, but I'm curious if there's going to be just unforced regime change in the Middle East with either Iran or a Palestinian leadership just passing. They're both quite old. There's a lot of kind of talk about succession right now in both, and either one would be a big shift for either place in the Middle East and possibly for the region.
Well, we'll go round the table one more time. Quentin, I will start with you. I want to ask you, as I cunningly foreshadowed, for one hope and one fear for 2026. And Quentin, stop looking at what Julie's writing.
Well, my hope would be that we pay a hell of a lot more attention to Sudan. Mm-hmm. That is a nightmare that has to somehow be dealt with, and it is a mega tragedy beyond belief. My fear is that none of the peace processes that Donald Trump is already claiming justify his getting the Nobel Peace Prize will prove to be real.
Yossi.
Well, I hope that the discourse in politics will change dramatically. And, it's so vitriolic, so toxic. We need to change. So I think it will help if the demise, not physically, I'm not suggesting any political violence, of some of those who actually inject into the discourse, whether it's Trump, whether it's Netanyahu, Putin, that we can move into a different kind of era.
And your fear?
It goes back to AI. The more I see what it's capable of doing and replacing, and I think my fear always, because I have background in technology, is those who develop technology are way further down the road. They don't understand what are the social implications of this. And as a result, this gap is really, really dangerous, how it's going to affect society as a result of it. And AI, more than any other development in technology, probably since it started.
And Julie, finally, a hope and a fear from you in either order?
Yeah, I mean, my hope is definitely on the region I've been working on Gaza, that things actually get better and that there is some movement towards something sustainable there. But my fear is the same, that it will not actually happen. But I would say that's coupled with a broader thing that I see this with my students a lot, that I hope that they can still believe in some, that they can do good things in the world, because there's a lot of cynicism, and especially around international law and the inability of world leaders, of people like us to actually get things right or change things, and international law and things like this. So I fear that cynicism is going to deepen, and I hope that there's a way that they can see something good happen this year to keep them somewhat idealistic.
Well, on that somewhat upbeat note, and we will, of course, be hearing more from all three of you as the year proceeds on Monocle Radio. Julie Norman, Yossi Meckelberg, Quentin Peel, thank you all and Happy New Year. That's it for this episode of The Foreign Desk. We'll be back next week, and look out for The Foreign Desk Explainer, available every Wednesday. The Foreign Desk was produced by Anita Riota and Lily Austin. Lily also produces The Foreign Desk Explainer. To contact the Foreign Desk team, you can email Anita at aer@monocle.com, and don't forget to subscribe to Monocle Magazine and to our free daily email bulletins by heading to our website at monocle.com. From me, Andrew Mueller, thank you very much for listening. Until next time, goodbye.